Welcome on into the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. This is episode number 83 of season 2025, and we're fast approaching the end. AFLW is nearly done for the season. We're up to prelim final weekend this weekend. 2 games coming up to book their tickets into the grand final. If you're new around here, we focus on both the men's and women's competition. We do 1 to 2 episodes a week, depending what time of the year it is. At the moment, we're on 1. There will be double episodes next week, 1 on the men's and 1 on the women's. We'll be looking at the AFL men's draft, which is coming up over the next couple nights in terms of when this video goes out. But the video wrapping that one up, we'll go through every draft pick, will be coming out either Sunday night or Monday next week. So stick around, check that one out, hit the subscribe or follow button depending what platform you're on so you don't miss that. And then there'll be obviously a grand final preview episode of the AFLW women's final next week as well. So massive content coming out over the next couple of weeks. Plenty of social media stuff as well, so go check that out. All Aussie Rules everywhere. I'm Jay. I'm the host for this show. Sure. And yeah, that's basically all the paperwork, all the nitty gritty out of the way. We'll now jump into the actual content. As we do with all our AFLW episodes, we're going to start with wrapping up our last weekend's games. There was 2 games last weekend. We'll go through everything you need to know from the weekend of football, and then we will jump into a preview for this weekend's games coming up, and we will chuck in the middle our tips from last week, how they went, and we'll have a look at Player of the Final Series so far, the award that we do for that. So plenty of stuff coming up. So stick around. I'm not exactly sure how long this episode will go. Hopefully keep it to about half an hour or so, a little bit shorter than most, due to there being less games at the moment. But we'll see how it plays out. So let's jump into it. First game of the semi-final weekend. Both games were at Icon Park on Saturday. This one was the afternoon game. It was Melbourne-Adelaide. Big matchup. 2 teams had played each other plenty of times over the course of the history. Both pretty successful clubs in the AFLW so far. And this is probably the best game of the final series so far that we've had. Probably one of the better games of the season. In my opinion, it was an absolute cracker. Both teams certainly had their chances throughout this one. Melbourne got off to the flying start like they did last week against Brisbane, actually. But unlike that game, they finished it off well. So they kicked the first couple, Fitzsimon and Kate Hoare. What an absolute star Kate is. They got their first 2 on the board. Caitlin Gould got one back for the Crows, and then right on quarter time, Maggie Mahoney kicked one to give the Demons a 20-8 lead, 12-point lead, 2 goals, which was probably a fair representation of the first quarter. I think Melbourne were probably the better team, certainly for the first 5 to 10 minutes. Adelaide had a period there where they certainly had a bit of control, but just couldn't quite capitalise, and then Melbourne obviously got that late goal, which was massive in the context of that first quarter. Second quarter came around and Adelaide played an absolute blinding quarter. Jess Allen got the first, then it was Tia Charlton with a great goal, Zoe Prowse and Neve Kelly kicking one, which was about the 17-minute mark of that second quarter to give Adelaide 4 goals in a row, and to get them right. Not just back in the game, but in front. That was about a 13-point lead. When I say about, it was exactly a 13-point lead. Melbourne got one back. Maggie Mahoney kicked her second, which just steadied the ship a little bit for Melbourne. But just like at the end of the first quarter, when Melbourne kicked a goal right on the siren, Adelaide did the reverse this time. Danielle Ponta kicking one very, very deep into the quarter. So 13-point lead at halftime for the Crows, and it was starting to look very similar to last week's Melbourne game, when first quarter they looked really good, and then Brisbane took over from then on. But unlike last week, from that point on, it was basically the Melbourne show. Adelaide had plenty of opportunities, but Melbourne took their opportunities, and Adelaide just couldn't convert their inside 50s into goals at all in that second half. Um, Adelaide kicked 7 goals for the match. 5 of them were in that second quarter. So um, you're not going to win too many games when you go through 3 quarters kicking 2 goals, especially when you concede 9 goals, 6 for the match. So the third quarter came around. Blathan, Mackin, and Kate Hoare both kicked a goal each. That was Kate Hoare's second goal. And it was dead level at 3-quarter time, and you kind of felt like Melbourne had the momentum, but you expected a little bit of a comeback from Adelaide. And they had plenty of forward attempts in the final quarter. At one point, I think they had 7-3 inside 50s for the quarter, but Melbourne had kicked 3 goals from their 3 inside 50s. So it was just a matter of execution, and Melbourne absolutely executed in that last quarter. Pretty much the whole last half, if we're being honest. Kate Hoare kicked the first of the final quarter for her 3rd goal of the match. Absolutely insane game from Kate Hoare, and that was the best of the bunch from her. Riley Witherspoon kicked one and had a really good 5 or 6 minute spell there in the final quarter that was very important for the Demons' performance in this game. Georgie Campbell kicked her first at the 11-minute mark of the final quarter, sorry. And at this point, you pretty much had it in the books. The Demons were up by close to 20 points. There was a couple behinds kicked, and then Ebony Marinoff did kick a goal in the dying minute and a half or so to get them within 11 points, but they still would have needed 2 more goals in basically a minute, which was just too much, and they couldn't get another score. They lose by 11 points, 7-7, 49 to 9-6, 60. Certainly an interesting game. Melbourne in our team ratings came out quite a fair way up, 64.1 to 59.7. It's not a massive margin. For context, the other game on the weekend was a gap of about 20, and I think only one time this year Kangaroos have had a team get within like 17 points of them in the team ratings. So 6 or 5 or so points between the two suggests that it was a pretty tightly contested game, and I think that's a fair representation of it. If we're looking at some of the team stats in this one, the inside 50 count was massive towards Adelaide at 46 to 31. So Melbourne, who averaged 41 inside 50s a game, were well below that in this match. So a little bit of a different game from them. Meanwhile, Adelaide were well above their average. They just couldn't convert. They couldn't hit targets in their 50. They couldn't make their opportunities count. And in the end, that's probably the difference between the two teams, is that ability. So Melbourne, 9 goals, 6 from 31 inside 50s is very good efficiency rate. In terms of AFLW numbers, Adelaide Crows 7-7 from 46 inside 50s is around about average, so not terrible, but just in comparison, Melbourne just were really efficient going forward is probably the number one thing here. They really made their opportunities count. There's no doubt about that. Disposal efficiency numbers are very interesting here. Adelaide really struggled. That was another key factor for them, I believe. They were 3% below their average at 59.1% disposal efficiency. Meanwhile, Melbourne went above their average at 64.5%. So that's a difference of basically 5%. So you work that out. It's 1 in every 20 disposals extra that I think that's right. Is that right? Yeah. 1 in every 20 disposals extra that Melbourne are hitting the target with, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it really adds up over a game of football when you're having 280 disposals. It ends up being an extra shot at goal or an extra couple shots at goal throughout a match. So pretty important factor there. Clearance numbers were pretty even. I think Melbourne dominated certain periods of the clearance game, but Adelaide fought on and had their own dominance at times as well. It was only +3 for Melbourne for the game, so both these teams have really solid midfield numbers throughout most of the year, and this was no exception. They both put up a really good fight. Adelaide actually won the contested football by +14, which is a pretty big margin, especially for Adelaide. who throughout the season have not been the most contested game, ball-winning game, whereas Melbourne usually are. So that was probably something that I think the Crows went into this game with a real emphasis on beating Melbourne in. They couldn't convert it into scores, though. Uncontested football, though, was controlled by Melbourne, plus 40 there. Turnover numbers were quite high for both teams, well above average. Melbourne actually had an extra 3 turnovers, which is not a great sign. They'll certainly have to be a lot cleaner than that this weekend against North Melbourne if they are to have any chance on putting up a fight against the Kangaroos. They will not be able to have 77 turnovers. If they have 77 turnovers this week, you can put it in the books. They are losing to North Melbourne without a doubt. Other than that, I don't think there's anything too fascinating in the rest of the stats. Pretty low tackle numbers for both teams. Both teams typically reasonably high tackle numbers, but not in this game. We'll jump into the player stats. As you can see, if you're watching this, if you're just listening, we do have the MVP votes up on the screen. So top 5 rated players for each team every game get votes. The winning team get 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2. The losing team get half of that at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The best player from both teams in this game were absolutely miles ahead of everyone else. There's no doubt in my mind they were the best 2 players on the ground. Kate Hoare, absolutely fantastic. 26 touches, 3 goals. There's just nothing that she doesn't do week in, week out. Absolute gun. And same can be said for last year's AFL Best and Fairest winner, Ebony Marinoff. 27 touches, a goal, 2 clearances. As it turns out, both of these players have been their team's best player both weeks of the finals so far. Not really that surprising. They are both absolute guns of the competition. And they both played outstanding. Outside of those two, you work your way down the Melbourne list. Talia Gillard was absolutely really, really good throughout most of this game. Gets the 8 votes. Taylor gets the 6 for the Demons. Didn't have many touches, but was very efficient. Goldrick gets the 4, and Shelley Heath gets the 2 votes for 24 touches in this one. Meanwhile, over the other side, it was obviously Ebony Marinoff on top. So then Tia Charlton, who kicked that early goal. Chelsea Bidel was absolutely outstanding and kept the Crows' defence in this at times. I know they conceded quite a lot, but it certainly wasn't Chelsea's fault. A good game from her. Sarah Allen gets the 2, and Kaylee Cronin gets the 1 vote here. Anything else worth mentioning? Maggie Mahoney, 2 goals. Kate Hoare, 3. No one really dominated the clearance game. As we said, there weren't massive tackle numbers, but Tia Charlton did lead the way with 11. Meters gained, Neve Kelly 518, Ebony Marinoff 501. Other than that, I don't think there's too much else to go through on this game. It was a cracking game. It was an enjoyable game. Obviously, the winner of that is going up against North Melbourne this week, so a really, really tough challenge coming up. We'll preview that game up shortly, though. And before we do that, we'll jump into the other game from the weekend. And this was a less close game. It was Hawthorn hosting Carlton at Carlton's home ground. Go figure. But that's the way the rules work. And Hawthorn did not show up for finals for the second year in a row. They get eliminated in straight sets. Last year, they went a lot closer at three-quarter time last year. They were well and truly not just in the game, but they looked almost home. This year, not so much. This game was done quickly. Carlton absolutely came out of the blocks flying and probably could have been further up, to be honest. They wasted some opportunities in that first quarter, especially. At quarter time, it was 4-7 to 0-0. So after quarter time, they kicked 7-6 Carlton to 4-9. So they still beat Hawthorn. They kicked a lot straighter after quarter time, but overall, a really, really good performance from Carlton, not so much from Hawthorn. So they kicked it off. Mia Austin kicked the first goal 2 minutes into the game. It was a cracking start. They then missed quite a few opportunities. before Soph Mackay even kicked her first of a couple. Poppy Schultz, another first-year player for the Blues who's had an outstanding season, kicked one. And then right before quarter time, Mimi Hill got one as well to give them that 31-point lead at quarter time. And you kind of felt like it was all over already, which almost was, because Hawthorn finished on 33, Carlton were on 31 at quarter time. So not quite over, but close enough. Mia Austin kicked her second to start the second quarter. Then Hawthorn finally got on the board with Daisy Flockhart, who's had a really good end to the season this year, kicking her first. Soph Mackay got her second goal 16 minutes into that second quarter, and then Jasmine Fleming got one back for the Hawks to give them slight hope heading into half-time, down 27 points, 43-16. It was 2 goals apiece for that quarter. Hawthorn actually winning the second quarter by 4 points. But after half-time, one team came out, and unfortunately for Hawthorn, it was not them. It was the team that was already up by 27 points, extending that out with a onslaught early in that third quarter. Abby Mackay got one on her birthday. Before it was Dana Finn kicking one. 2 goals back-to-back, even across about 2 minutes of play. And then Lily Goss kicked one as well to give them a 4-goal quarter to 0 for Hawthorn. So Hawthorn only managed 2 behinds to that one end for the match. 0-0 in the first quarter, 0-2 in the third quarter. So they did all their damage the other way. But unfortunately, Carlton just had too many answers. They were up 70-18 at 3-quarter time, and it was all over Red Rover. Thanks for coming. See you at another day. Final quarter played out to be basically the same. So Mackay managed her 3rd goal of the final. I think that's 2 games in finals now that she's played and managed 5 goals. So finished this season absolutely outstanding, has Sophie. And doesn't she love to celebrate? It's great to see. Hawthorn managed to kick the last 2 goals of the game, including one basically at the end. That was Aine McDonough and then Laura Stone kicking those 2 goals just to give them a little bit of respect late in the game. But they lose by 46 points in the end. They weren't in this game, let's be fair. 4-9-33, 11-13, 79 for the Blues. Absolutely fantastic performance by the Blues, who now head up to Brisbane to play the Lions for a spot in the grand final. Dare to dream, I guess, for the Blues. Let's believe. Team stats for this one. As you can see, the team rating has Carlton way out in front. No real surprise when they won this game by 46 points. 70.8 to a 52.2 is one of Hawthorn's worst games of the year. I think their worst 3 games of the season this year have been their last 3, which is disappointing. Granted, 2 of them were against North Melbourne, and I think this one's probably the worst of the lot, just due to the fact that it wasn't against North Melbourne. Take nothing away from the Blues, who absolutely turned up and played great in this. Disposal numbers were pretty level, to be honest. 284 to Carlton, 256 to Hawthorn. It's about where we expected it. Maybe an extra couple for Carlton than their average, but overall not too much different. A lot of inside 50s. Ball was bouncing from end to end a lot, but Carlton just made their opportunities count. They only had 1 extra inside 50 for an extra 7 goals for. So a lot more efficiency forward for Carlton. In the reverse of the last match, the team that had the better disposal efficiency in this game actually lost. Hawthorn looked after the ball quite well. They went at 62.5%, which is well above their average, whereas Carlton did the reverse, went below their average at 58.8. But the clearance game is probably the biggest discrepancy in this match. 32-16 for clearances. Hawthorn just didn't have an answer at any point of this match. For centre clearances, they lost by 5, 10-5, and stoppage clearances, they also lost at 50% rate, 11-22. Domination by Carlton in the middle, and that just gave them first use of it. And then neither team had many turnovers. Like Carlton had 7 turnovers less than their average, as did Hawthorn. So when you're winning clearances by basically double, winning 2 to every 1 of the opposition's clearances, if you're not turning over the ball that many times, you're going to be creating shots a goal. So, and that's what Carlton did here. Dominated clearance game. Only 60 turnovers for the match. In comparison, the other game, both teams had over 70. So that just shows how well they looked after the ball. Granted, Hawthorn only had 58 turnovers, but they weren't getting the first hands on the ball. They weren't getting those clearances like Carlton were, and that's the difference right there in this match. Just 37 marks for the Hawks in this game compared to 60 for the Blues. 18 marks inside 50 for Carlton is a really, really high number. Their average for the season is 7.5, and they had 18 in this game. Another massive stat, 13 contested marks for the Blues. Their average is 6. So just some massive numbers. They absolutely, their best game of the season by far. They bought it out at the right time. Absolute credit to them. They showed up. They did what they needed to when they needed to. And they walk away with a really good win and a spot in a prelim final on the right side of the draw because they miss out on North Melbourne in the prelim. So well done to the Blues for that. MVP votes, top 5 players for both teams. We'll start with Carlton as the winning team. A lot of good players. There's probably 8 to 10 players that could have been in the top 5 on most days with the ratings that they put up. Really good performance from a lot of the Carlton players. Mimi Hill was the highest rated though with 27 touches and a goal. Absolutely fantastic performance. 8 goes to Matty Gurin, 24 disposals, 11 tackles, 7 clearances. Aaron Fitzpatrick, who has had an absolutely outstanding season, could have had an even bigger game. Kicked 2 behinds, but 17 touches, 6 tackles. And 282 metres gained as well as 2 goal assists. Sophie McKay with 3 goals gets the 4 votes in this one. A really good performance again from Soph, who's had an absolute outstanding wrap up to her first season. Lily Goss gets 2 votes for 17 touches and a goal with 4 clearances. Unlucky players, Abby McKay, 25 touches and a goal with 7 clearances. Had a really good game. Breanne Harrington has had a really good second half of the season, playing that ruck key forward role, rotating between the two. Would have been in the top 5 if had a kick straight, kick 0-3 for the match. Poppy Schultz played really well. Dana Finn on the wing, another outstanding game from her, who's been the number 1 outside midfielder in the competition this year so far, in the whole competition. So fantastic performance there. On the other side of the fence for the Hawks, 5 votes went to Jenna Richardson, who had a good final series, but just didn't have enough support, I don't think. Tilly Lucas-Rod, 23 touches, gets the 4 votes. Michaela Williamson gets the 3 votes for 19 touches. 2 votes goes to Tamara Smith for 11 touches, and Eliza West rounds out their top 5, their 5th best player in this one. Multiple goal kickers in the game. We've already kind of read them out, but Soph McKay with 3 from 16 touches, Dana Finn with 2 from 19, and Mia Austin 2 from 9 touches. So the Blues go to take on the Brisbane Lions this weekend in a prelim final for a spot in the grand final. Meanwhile, Hawthorn are eliminated. Back-to-back years in straight sets. Overall, I'm not that surprised. Certainly last year, I didn't think they were in the top 4 teams. I think they got a little bit lucky with their schedule last year that allowed them to get a bit of a lucky run and make the top 4. I think they finished second on the ladder last year. But this year, it was a little different, in my opinion. They started okay. They weren't smashing teams. They were just getting the job done. And that was always kind of a concern. Their offensive ability at times did look a little bit lackluster. Aine McDonough kind of cancelled that out second half of the season by being quite good offensively and giving them that target. But in the finals, it just kind of petered out to a nothing, didn't it? It was always going to be tough with Kangaroos first up, and then playing up against an up and about Carlton team at their home ground in week 2 of the finals was always going to be another difficult task, and that's kind of how it played out. So disappointing end to Hawthorn's season. I think there's just a couple pieces missing from the puzzle at the moment to get them to that next step to reach the level of the top 2 teams. I think Kangaroos are clearly number 1 by a fair margin, but even Brisbane, I think, are clear second at the moment. That's not to say that I can't see Carlton beating them this week, but I feel like Brisbane are the clear second team, and they certainly have been over the second half of the season. They started a little bit scratchy early season, but they've certainly turned that around of late. Our tips for the weekend, I'm gutted about this. I can't believe I tipped Hawthorn. We got the Demons right, pretty close to the right margin too. It was 11 points and we said 7. We get the other one wrong. I didn't get it wrong in my actual footy tipping, but I did on here. I said Hawthorn by 10. I went against the numbers. Everything said Carlton should win, but I don't know what I saw. Anyway, we got it wrong. Hawthorn lost by 46 points. We went 1 for 2, 82 out of 114 on the year. We're 5 out of 6 for the finals. That was our first one we've got wrong this final series so far. So not outstanding, but it is what it is. We move on to the finals MVP leaderboard. After the second week of finals, obviously the top few players have played 2 games. Everyone else has not. Well, not everybody else, but there's a few teams that have not. Carlton and Brisbane obviously have only played 1 game. Ebony Marinoff and Kate Hall with perfect scores after week 2. 1 win, 1 loss. Got the 10 in their win and the 5 in their loss. Lead the way, 15 votes. Aaron Fitzpatrick, obviously Carlton have won 2 games, so their maximum score would be 20 at the moment. Aaron has 14, so a really outstanding final series so far there. Then we've got 4 players on 10, Jazz Garner, Ali Anderson, Mimi Hall, and Jessica Good, all on 10. And then a whole bunch of players on 8, including Jenna Richardson, who ends up as Carlton's best finals player. Libby Birch and Hatchard, Madeline Gurin, Talia Gillard, Saraid Taylor, and Shannon Campbell, all on 8, heading into prelim final weekend, which will certainly shake it up. Obviously, the teams that win this weekend really give their players a massive opportunity there, because then they get another week at it, and then obviously you win the premiership. Most times you're going to have the best finals player. Moving on to our preview for week 3 of the finals, and it's prelim final weekend, and we head to Icon Park on Saturday afternoon. I'll be at this game. Kangaroos v Melbourne. Best in the business, maybe one of the best professional sports teams in the history of sports right now. North Melbourne, absolute fantastic. They're so far ahead of everyone. 2 years in a row, but this year way further ahead than they were last year. Last year they were the best team overall. This year they are not just the best team, they are leaps and bounds ahead of everyone so far this year. That's not to say they can't lose a game, that someone can't beat them. It's sport. Funny things happen. But from what we've seen so far, you'd be pretty outrageous to tip against the Kangaroos, I think. They haven't met this year, which is the one positive for Melbourne, I guess. Last time these 2 teams met was round 3 last year, which was a very different Melbourne team. But North Melbourne won that one by 50 points. 11 goals, 5 to 3-3. 2023, they met twice. They met in round 8, and then they met in week 1 of the finals. And North Melbourne won the finals game, 50-9. But Melbourne did actually win the game in round 8. That was 37-14. Of course, North Melbourne went on to play in a grand final that year, but lost to the Brisbane Lions. The form obviously is North Melbourne haven't lost a game in 26 or something games since that 2023 grand final, and they've won every game since round 2 last season. So They're on an absolute tear, and it's hard to see that not happening again this week. Their defense is absolutely flying. They've only conceded more than 3 goals in a game once in the last 5 weeks, and that was against the Adelaide Crows about 4 weeks ago when they still won by 40 points. Offensively, they pretty much score at will. Inaccuracy is a little bit of an issue. 5 goals, 12 last week was not great. A few weeks ago against St Kilda, it was 9 goals, 13. So kicking poorly in front of goal might be their biggest issue. I don't see it being a big enough issue here, but you just never know. On the other side of the fence, Melbourne are going win-loss, win-loss. Their form's pretty solid, certainly offensively. I think they're conceding a little bit more than they would like. Like last week it was 49, the week before it was 56 against Brisbane. Granted, these are against some good teams, but 45 against Geelong, 45 against Brisbane. You got to go all the way back 5 weeks ago against Sydney when they conceded 21 for the last time that they actually kept a team under 40, which is not ideal when you look at the other side of the fence where North Melbourne haven't conceded above 31 basically all season long. So it's going to be hard for Melbourne to keep the Kangaroos' score down while also scoring enough to get past the Roos. They're going to need a lot of luck, I think, in all honesty. They will be massive favourites, obviously. Kangaroos going into this average about 50 extra disposals a game. Inside 50 count isn't a massive discrepancy, but that efficiency forward, creating shots when going forward, is massive in favour of the Kangaroos. Clearance game, pretty level, in all honesty. Disposal efficiency is Kangaroos are by far the number one team in the competition. They got almost 68%. Melbourne are in that next wave of teams, but they're back at 64%. So it's a big concern that trying to make the Kangaroos turn it over is not easy. And they're also very good at keeping their opposition's disposal efficiency really low. They set up really well, so if they do not score or they kick it behind, they set up their defense really well and make it very difficult for you to get it out. Not many, if any, teams have been able to this year. They make you second guess where you're going. They're just really well drilled. They're really well set up, and that's going to be a massive issue for the Demons in this game, is how do they get past that. Other than that, I don't think there's too many other things to go through. It's going to be hotly contested. There's going to be plenty of tackles probably going the way of Melbourne. The turnover count probably won't be too high, depending how ferocious the game is. But typically, neither of these two teams are massive turnover teams. Although there's been a couple performances over recent weeks for both teams that have been slightly above their average. But we'll see how that plays out. It's going to be Saturday afternoon footy. I think it's a 3:05 kickoff. Is that correct? 3:05 p.m. kickoff at Icon Park. As I said, I will be there. I'm expecting the Kangaroos to win. I might go for Melbourne just to make it an interesting game. But you'd imagine North Melbourne will be too strong from what we've seen this year. And they will book themselves into a third straight grand final and potentially a third straight grand final against the Brisbane Lions, which would be absolutely crazy. But yeah, that's Saturday afternoon football. Should be a good game. If nothing else, you're going to get a good show from some of the competition's best players. Jasmine Garner, Ash Riddell for Kangaroos, Kate Hoare for Melbourne. It should be an absolute cracking midfield battle, I think, throughout this game. So we'll see how that plays out, but that is Saturday afternoon. We jump into Saturday evening football. This will be a 7:35 kickoff up in Brisbane town. Brisbane v Carlton at Brighton Homes Arena. Brisbane will be reasonably short price favourites, nowhere near as short as the Kangaroos. As the Lions look to book their third straight grand final appearance, obviously winning the premiership in 2023. Runners-up last year, losing to the Kangaroos before they made another run at it again this year. Slow start to their year, but boy, have they been on fire over the last maybe 8 or so weeks. And I would imagine they should be raring to go. Last 3 times these teams have met, they met in round 3 earlier this year up in Brisbane, and Carlton pulled off the surprise victory by 14 points, 9-4, 58 to 6-8, 44. That was a cracking game by the Blues. Granted, Brisbane have really got themselves going since that point. Most of it, well, pretty much all the damage was done in the second quarter for the Blues that day, which has been kind of a little bit of a trademark of the Blues in their best games this season, is pounding goals on quickly in a quarter or so and putting the game out of reach. Scores were level early in the quarter when Brisbane kicked a goal through Dakota Davidson, and then the Blues kicked the next 5 going into half-time to give them a 29-point lead at half-time. Brisbane fought their way back into it at points, but they just didn't have answers in the end, and Carlton, absolutely fantastic performance to walk away up in Brisbane with a win. Granted, Brisbane have probably got a lot better since that point, but a really good performance there by the Blues. They met once last year, and the Lions won that one by 55 points. Obviously, Carlton's last year's numbers were a lot worse than this year. And then 2022 was the previous time they met, and that was an absolute domination by the Lions, 35 points winners. So the game earlier this year is probably the best form guide that we're going to get for this one, but I would expect a lot better from Brisbane. But just something they really have to be aware of is Carlton's ability to turn a game quickly by kicking back-to-back goals. They do it basically as good as any team in the competition, and that is a massive, massive factor. They get on a run and they can put you to bed pretty quickly. They did it to Hawthorn. They did it to Brisbane earlier this year. They've done it to West Coast. They've done it many, many times. So that's just something that Brisbane absolutely have to be aware of going into this game, is if you concede one goal, do not let them kick another straight away. Do not give them that chance to build that momentum. You've got to shut the game down, at least for a few minutes, or even better, kick a goal yourself and stop that run. Both teams in great form. Obviously, Brisbane have won their last 8 or so. Carlton, I think it might be 7 or 8. I don't know how many wins in a row it is for Brisbane. It is a few, though. Meanwhile, Carlton have won their last 4. Their last 2 to book their spot in a finals before beating West Coast and Hawthorn in the finals. They're getting better and better. Offensively, they're scoring quite a lot. Their last 4 weeks, they've gone 81, 42, 60, 79. So that's really good offensive scoring. Meanwhile, defensively, going also really well. 35, 22, 19, 33. So teams struggling against them to score a decent score against them. And also, no one's been able to stop them from scoring quite well defensively. Brisbane, offensively, they're pretty consistent. They've gone 62, 54, 45, 52, 56. So all in that 45 to 62 range. And defensively, no one's really scoring much over 30 against them. Melbourne did get 43 a couple of weeks ago, but a lot of that damage was done in that first quarter where Melbourne looked really good early. Couldn't run it out, really. So we'll see what happens on Saturday night. But one thing for certain is it looks like it's going to be a great game. Carlton midfield is flying. Brisbane midfield is always going pretty well. Carlton probably have the better overall defense, maybe, in terms of defense, maybe not run-off defense. But it's going to shape up as a really tantalizing matchup, and I'm certainly looking forward to finding somewhere to watch the game on Saturday night and sitting back with a beer or two and watching this one play out, because I think it'll be fascinating, especially if Carlton get on an early run. Watch out. Stats-wise, worth mentioning here, both teams are pretty level across the board in many facets. Brisbane will probably win the inside 50 count. So if they can turn that into scores and shots at goal, they will be dangerous. But other than that, many many of the stats are very similar. Both teams low disposal efficiency, both pretty even in contested football, both very similar kick to handball ratios. It's just going to, it really shapes up as an absolute battle of two teams that kind of play a lot the same. Brisbane, obviously, the ones that have done it more consistently over multiple years. Carlton, the up and coming team. So it's just shapes up as a really, really tantalising matchup. It's going to be. It looks like being a lot better game than the other prelim final. The winner of this obviously will have a tough matchup in a grand final, but you've got to be in it to win it. So it's going to be, fascinating. Looking forward to it. And yeah, that's about all I've got to say about that one. Jump into our tips for the week. We're going with a Roos by 37 points over the Demons. They should just be too strong based on everything we've seen this year. I think the most likely team to beat the Kangaroos is actually Brisbane. Melbourne probably would be my third pick in the whole AFLW, so it is kind of the way that it has shaped up. Using our rating system that we use on the back of each game, has North Melbourne clear top, it has Brisbane clear second, and all of a sudden Carlton have made a run late season to really push up, and them and the Demons are pretty similar third and fourth in that rating system. So the top four teams in the ratings have gone through to the prelim final. But if you had have done the ratings 3 weeks ago, Carlton were not in the top four. They were about 6 or 7. So it's been some really good back end of the season form from Carlton that have shot them up and got them into this position. It is what it is. I've got the Roos too strong for Melbourne though. And in the other one, just based on the fact that Brisbane are the higher rated team, they've done this many times before. I'm going with them by 7 over Carlton, but I am certainly not writing Carlton off. It will be a fascinating matchup to see how that one plays out. As I've said many times, Carlton are a very dangerous team. Their worst this year has not been great, but their best has been absolutely as good as Brisbane's best. So if Carlton can show up, they can definitely put up a really good fight in this one. So that's how my tips look for this weekend. We'll see if we can go 2 for 2. Looking forward on the podcast and in the AFLW, as I mentioned, we will be doing an episode next week, which will be reviewing the 2 prelim finals as well as a preview of the AFLW grand final, which will be next weekend. So make sure you have followed or subscribed if you haven't already so you don't miss that. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below. Let me know who you think will win these 2 matchups this weekend. They should be good games. As I also said, we will be doing an AFL men's draft episode on either Sunday night or Monday, depending on timeframes of my travel and whatnot. But it'll definitely be out early next week. So make sure you come back for that. There's a lot to get through with that. Obviously, the draft hasn't been. It's about 2 days away from time of recording. And then, we're into off-season stuff for AFLW after that. And also, we're getting close to pre-season. So we're going to start doing some men's season predictions coming up. We've got plenty of content. Go check out the YouTube if you're not already on there. We've got the schedule. AFL fixture came out last week, so we've got a video up on the YouTube channel for that. Go check that out. Check out all the social medias. All Aussie Rules everywhere. I'm Jay. This has been another episode of the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. We're wrapping up the season quickly. There's not long left before 2026, which is crazy to think. I'm already excited for the men's season, but before we get there, we're going to go through the AFLW last 2 finals weeks, and I'm looking forward to it to see who plays off in that grand final next week. So, nothing more to add. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll check yous. I'll check yous out. No, you'll see me. I don't know what I'm talking. You'll see me next week on the Footy Podcast.